Life in ancient Mesopotamia follows the rhythm of the seasons and the rivers. Each year, the snow melts in the distant mountains of Anatolia, and the Tigris and Euphrates swell with fresh water. If the flooding comes at the right time and with the right strength, it's a blessing, depositing rich, dark silt across the fields. But the rivers are unpredictable. Sometimes they flood too much, washing away homes and crops. Sometimes they flood too little and famine threatens. This unpredictability shapes everything about Mesopotamian culture. Unlike Egypt, where the Nile floods with reliable regularity, Mesopotamia is a land of uncertainty. Perhaps this is why the Mesopotamians see their world as one where the gods are powerful and capricious, where humans must constantly work to please divine forces that might help or harm them at any moment. Let your mind wander now to a royal palace in the city of Ur, around 2500 BC. The moon has risen, and in its cool light, a queen is being prepared for her final journey. Her name is Pwabi, and she's being laid to rest in a tomb deep beneath the city, surrounded by everything she'll need in the afterlife. Golden jewelry adorns her body, a magnificent headdress of golden leaves and lapis lazuli beads. Beside her place silver lyres, gaming boards, cosmetic containers. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, each piece created by artisans who've spent years perfecting their skills. But the most haunting part of this burial is that Pwabi is not alone. Members of her court, musicians, soldiers, and attendants have chosen or been chosen to accompany her. They've dressed in their finest clothes, arranged themselves in the tomb chamber, and drunk from cups that likely contained poison. They lie now in neat rows, as if sleeping, ready to serve their queen in whatever world comes next. These royal tombs of Ur, when archaeologists discover them thousands of years later, will reveal the incredible wealth and artistry of early Mesopotamian civilization, but also its harsh realities, its beliefs about life, death, and duty. Time flows forward like the Tigris, and we arrive now in the reign of Hammurabi, around 1750 BC. Babylon has risen to become the greatest city in Mesopotamia. King Hammurabi is not just a warrior and conqueror, though he is those things. He's also bringing order to his realm in a new way. Through a comprehensive code of laws, carved into a tall stone pillar of black diorite that stands in the city center where everyone can see it. Imagine standing before this stele, over 7 feet tall, its surface covered with nearly 300 laws written in neat columns of cuneiform script. At the top, carved in relief, Hammurabi himself stands before Shamash, the sun god and god of justice, receiving divine authority for his laws. The message is clear. These aren't just the king's rules, they carry the weight of heaven itself. The laws cover almost every aspect of daily life. If a builder constructs a house and it collapses, killing the owner, the builder will face consequences. If a surgeon performs a successful operation, here is their payment. If someone steals an ox or a sheep, here is what they must repay. The punishments are often severe, sometimes shockingly so to our modern minds, but they represent something revolutionary, the idea that justice should be predictable, written down, the same for similar offenses, not just dependent on the whim of whoever holds power in that moment. Let yourself drift now through the marketplace of Babylon on a warm afternoon. The air is filled with sounds and scents, merchants calling out their wares, the smell of fresh bread baking, incense from a nearby temple, the less pleasant odors of livestock, and too many people pressed close together in the heat. Here, a merchant is weighing out silver on a careful balance scale. Mesopotamians don't use coins yet. Those won't be invented for another 1,000 years. Instead, they use weight amounts of silver and barley as currency. The merchant carefully places small silver rings on one side of the scale, balanced against a stone weight on the other. Trust is everything in these transactions, and the standard weights are kept in temples to ensure honesty. Beside him, a woman is bargaining for cloth. She's wearing a wool garment dyed with expensive purple from murex shells, indicating she's wealthy. The textile merchant shows her his finest work, wool from sheep raised in the countryside, washed, combed, spun into thread by skilled workers, then woven on large looms. The Mesopotamians have turned textile production into an art and an industry, with some workshops employing dozens of people. Further down the market, you can find lapis lazuli brought from distant Afghanistan, timber from the Lebanon mountains, copper from Oman, carnelian beads from the Indus Valley. Mesopotamia sits at a crossroads, and trade routes stretch in every direction like the strands of a vast web. Ships sail down from Anatolia and up from the Persian Gulf. Caravans of donkeys trek across deserts and mountains. Ideas and innovations travel along these same routes, techniques for metalworking, new crops, different styles of art and music. Let's follow one of these trade routes in our mind, drifting north along the Tigris River toward the city of Ashur, the heart of what will become the Assyrian Empire. It's growing quieter now. The busy marketplace fades behind us. We're traveling at the gentle pace of a river boat, the crew rhythmically rowing against the current. On the riverbank, farmers are working their fields. Mesopotamian agriculture is the foundation of everything. The surplus food it produces is what allows cities to exist, allowing some people to become full-time craftspeople, priests, scribes, soldiers, artists. A farmer guides his wooden plow, pulled by two patient oxen, cutting furrows in the soil. His son walks behind, dropping barley seeds into the furrow. The barley will grow tall and golden, then be harvested, threshed, and stored in great granaries. Close your eyes and let yourself drift back through time, back through millennia, to a place where human civilization first began to take root. We're traveling to ancient Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, where the gentle flow of the Tigris and Euphrates carved out a cradle for humanity's earliest dreams. Picture the year 3500 BC. The sun rises over southern Mesopotamia, casting golden light across endless marshlands and fertile plains. Here, in what we now call Iraq, small villages are beginning to grow into something the world has never seen before, the very first cities. The air is warm, filled with the calls of waterfall and the distant sound of people beginning their day. The Sumerians, those ingenious early people, have discovered something remarkable. They've learned that if you direct water from the rivers through carefully dug channels, you can transform the dry land into fields of barley and wheat. These irrigation canals, some stretching for miles, are mankind's first great engineering projects. Imagine farmers walking along the earthen banks at dawn, opening small gates to let water flow exactly where it's needed, watching the life-giving liquid spread across their fields like liquid silver in the early morning light. In the city of Uruk, which is slowly becoming the largest city on Earth, something revolutionary is happening. A scribe sits in the cool shade of a temple, a small tablet of wet clay resting on his lap. With a reed stylus, he carefully presses wedge-shaped marks into the soft surface. He's recording the temple's grain supplies, 50 bushels of barley, 30 of wheat. He doesn't realize it, but he's creating something that will change human history forever. This is writing, the earliest writing, and it's being born here, in this moment, out of the simple need to remember how much grain the temple has stored away. The clay tablet will be left in the sun to dry, hardening into a permanent record that will survive for over 5,000 years. These cuneiform marks, these little wedges pressed into clay, will allow humans to send messages across distances and time in ways they never could before. Let's drift now through the streets of this ancient city. Uruk is home to perhaps 40,000 people, a number unimaginable to the scattered villages that stilled, most of the earth. The streets are narrow, winding between mud brick houses that share walls with their neighbors. The bricks themselves are fascinating, each one carefully made from the river mud, mixed with straw and chaff, then shaped in wooden molds and left to bake in the relentless Mesopotamian sun. As evening approaches, the city takes on a golden glow. Families gather on their rooftops where it's cooler, eating simple meals of bread, dates, and onions. Children play games that their descendants will still play thousands of years later. And rising above it all, dominating the skyline, is the great temple complex, the Ziggurat, its terraced levels climbing toward the heavens like a mountain made by human hands. The Ziggurat is dedicated to Inanna, the goddess of love and war, the morning and evening star. Priests climb its long staircases each day, bringing offerings to the goddess and her shrine at the very top. From up there, they can see the entire city spread out below them, the surrounding fields stretching to the horizon, and the silver ribbon of the Euphrates River winding through the landscape. But farming here is more than just growing food. It's a battle against the environment. The hot sun can bake the soil hard as stone. Salt from irrigation water can build up in the fields over years, eventually making the soil too salty for crops to grow. Wind can bring devastating dust storms. Locusts can descend in clouds that darken the sky, devouring an entire season's crops in hours. The Mesopotamians developed techniques to manage these challenges. They learned to leave fields fallow, to plant salt-resistant crops, to pray to the gods for protection. They watched the sky constantly, reading omens in the movements of stars and planets, in the shapes of clouds, in the flight of birds. They're trying to understand the patterns of their world, to predict what's coming, to feel some control over forces much larger than themselves. Night has fallen now, and we find ourselves in the scribal school in the city of Nippur around 1800 BCE. This is where young boys, usually from wealthy families, come to learn the complex art of writing.
It's not easy.
There are hundreds of different cuneiform signs to memorize, and many signs can mean different things depending on context. A student might spend years learning to write proficiently. Picture a boy, perhaps 12 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a lump of clay before him. His teacher has written out a proverb on a tablet, and the boy must copy it perfectly. His hand aches from hours of practice, and his eyes are tired in the dim lamplight. The proverb says something like, "He who possesses much silver may be happy. He who possesses much barley may be happy, but he who has nothing at all may sleep." It's wisdom about contentment, about the burdens that come with wealth, lessons that feel timeless even across millennia. The student life is strict. There are records, written by scribes who remember their own school days, that tell us about the discipline. Students who arrive late are beaten, students who talk out of turn are beaten, students who stand up without permission are beaten. It seems harsh, but literacy is power in this world, and the path to becoming a scribe is demanding because the rewards are great. A skilled scribe will never go hungry, will be valued by temples and palaces, will be among the educated elite. These student exercises that survive on thousands of clay tablets give us an intimate glimpse into Mesopotamian life. Students practice writing out mathematical problems, learning to calculate areas of fields, volumes of granaries, the interest on loans. They copy out myths and legends, love songs and laments, medical texts and astronomical observations. Through their exercises, they preserve the knowledge and culture of their civilization. Let your thoughts drift now to the great library at Nineveh, though we're jumping forward in time to around 650 BC, to the reign of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal. This king is a warrior who has expanded his empire through brutal military campaigns, but he's also something rarer, a king who loves learning. Ashurbanipal has ordered scribes to collect tablets from all over Mesopotamia and bring them to his palace library. He wants everything: medical texts, mathematical tables, astronomical observations, rituals, prayers, omens, myths, epic poems, correspondence, treaties, administrative records. He's creating the world's first systematically organized library, with over 30,000 tablets carefully cataloged and stored. In a cool, quiet room within the palace, shelves line the walls, each holding rows of clay tablets. Some are small, fitting in the palm of your hand. Others are large and heavy, requiring both hands to lift. Each has been tagged with information about its contents, making it possible to find specific texts among the thousands. Here is the Epic of Gilgamesh, that ancient story of the king who sought immortality and learned wisdom instead. Here are tablets predicting the future based on the positions of Venus and Jupiter. Here are recipes for treating illnesses, mixing herbs and minerals in precise proportions. Here is the story of creation, the Enuma Elish, telling how the god Marduk defeated the chaos monster Tiamat and created the world from her body. The library is quiet now in the evening, scribes having finished their work for the day. Lamps flicker, casting moving shadows on the walls. Somewhere in the palace, musicians are playing for the king's dinner, the sound of a lyre, a drum, voices singing an ancient hymn in Sumerian, a language already ancient even in Ashurbanipal's time, preserved through centuries because the scribes have continued to copy and study it, treating it as a sacred tongue of scholarship and ritual. Let's drift back through time again, floating like a leaf on the Euphrates, back to the very beginning of Mesopotamian civilization, to around 5000 BC. We're in a small village, barely 100 people, living in simple reed houses built on small islands in the marshlands of southern Iraq. These marsh dwellers are the ancestors of the Sumerians, though they don't know the great things their descendants will accomplish. Their houses are ingenious, built entirely from the giant reeds that grow abundantly in the marshes. The reeds are bundled together to form thick columns, which are bent and tied to create arch structures. More reeds are woven between these arches to form walls and roofs. Inside, the air smells earthy and slightly sweet from the reeds. The floor is covered with woven mats. A small fire burns in a clay hearth, smoke drifting up through openings in the roof. A woman sits near the fire, nursing her baby, while her older daughter helps prepare the evening meal. They're cooking fish, freshly caught from the marshes, along with the roots of water plants. Life is simple, but not easy. Disease is common. Infant mortality is high. A bad season of fishing or a sudden shift in water levels can mean hunger. Yet there's also beauty here. The stunning sunsets over the water, the abundance of bird life, the close bonds of community where everyone knows everyone, where survival depends on cooperation. These marsh people are developing skills that will prove crucial. They're learning to manage water, to dig channels, to build up earth into platforms above flood level. They're domesticating plants and animals, experimenting with growing things deliberately rather than just gathering what grows wild. They're creating pottery, learning that clay from the riverbank can be shaped and fired into vessels that hold water, store grain, cook food. And they're beginning to trade. They have fish, reeds, and bitumen, that black, sticky substance that seeps up from the ground, incredibly useful for waterproofing boats and baskets. But they need stone for tools, wood for building, metal for implements. So they send their surplus fish and bitumen upriver and receive back the materials they lack. These first small trading relationships are the seeds that will eventually grow into the great trade networks connecting Mesopotamia to the entire ancient world. Time flows forward, and we find ourselves now in the city of Lagash around 2400 BCE, in the midst of a war. Mesopotamian cities are often at conflict with each other, fighting over water rights, trade routes, farmland, or simply for glory and plunder. The city-states are independent, each with its own ruler, its own patron deity, its own ambitions. The armies are marching out, soldiers in leather caps, carrying spears and axes, protected by large rectangular shields. They don't have stirrups or saddles yet, so they fight on foot, though the wealthiest warriors ride in chariots pulled by donkeys, for solid wooden wheels rumbling over the ground. The chariots are more for prestige and for the charge than for maneuverability. They're heavy, slow by later standards, but intimidating. The battle itself would seem strange to us. Before fighting, priests perform rituals, seeking omens to determine if the gods favor the battle. Both sides might agree on the date and location of the conflict, meeting in an open field between their cities. When combat begins, it's brutal and personal. Men fighting face to face with spear and axe, the smell of blood and sweat, the sounds of metal on metal, screams of wounded men, war cries. When one side breaks and runs, the killing becomes worse. The victors pursue, cutting down fleeing enemies. Prisoners are taken, often enslaved. The city that loses might have to pay tribute, accept a new ruler, or in the worst cases, be destroyed entirely, its temples burned, its walls torn down, its people scattered. But something remarkable emerges from these conflicts. After a victory, kings commission monuments to commemorate their triumphs. Stone steels are carved with images of the battle, with inscriptions listing the king's achievements. These aren't just propaganda, they're also historical records, giving us precise details about ancient events, the names of kings, the dates of battles, the shifting fortunes of cities. One such monument, the Stele of Vultures, shows the king of Lagash leading his army to victory. But it also shows something else, bodies of defeated enemies being eaten by vultures, a grim reminder of the cost of war. The king isn't glorified as perfect. The stele acknowledges the horror even as it celebrates the victory. Let's move away from the battlefield now, seeking peace. We drift to a temple complex in the city of Eridu, considered by the Mesopotamians themselves to be the oldest city, the first place where kingship descended from heaven. It's early morning, and the temple is coming to life. Priests are performing the morning ritual, washing and clothing the statue of Enki, the god of fresh water and wisdom, who dwells here in his temple. To the Mesopotamians, the statue isn't just a representation of the god. It is, in a real sense, the god's body, his physical presence on earth. The statue must be cared for as a living being. It's washed, dressed in fine garments, offered food and drink, entertained with music. The god's meals are elaborate: bread, beer, roasted meat, fruits, all placed before the statue on offering tables. Of course, the god doesn't physically consume the food. What happens is this: the god is believed to consume the spiritual essence of the offerings, and then the physical food is taken away and eaten by the priests. This isn't seen as theft or deception. The priests are the god's household servants, and servants eat from their master's table. It's a system that supports a large priestly class, but it also represents a genuine theological concept: humans serving the gods, providing for them, and in return receiving the gods' protection and blessings. The temple complex is vast. There are shrines, workshops, storehouses, administrative offices, living quarters for priests. The temple owns huge amounts of land, employs hundreds or thousands of people. It's not just a religious institution, it's an economic powerhouse, producing textiles, beer, bread, managing herds of sheep and goats, renting out land to farmers. In one of the temple workshops, women are spinning wool into thread. There might be 30 or 40 women working here, their hands moving with practiced speed, drawing out the fluffy wool and twisting it into strong, even thread on simple drop spindles. They work together, talking, singing, creating a social world within their labor. The thread they make will be woven into cloth, some used for temple purposes, some sold or traded, generating wealth for the institution. In another area, men are brewing beer. Beer is a staple in Mesopotamia, drunk by everyone from the poorest laborer to the richest king. It's nutritious, safer to drink than water from the rivers, and mildly alcoholic, providing a welcome relief at the end of a long day's work. The brewers are mixing barley bread with water in large vats, letting it ferment, straining it, storing it in large ceramic jars sealed with clay. Different grades of beer are produced: thick, nutritious beer for workers, fine, clear beer for the elite. The temple also serves as a center of learning. Young scribes are trained here, learning not just writing but mathematics, astronomy, medicine. Priests study the heavens, tracking the movements of the moon and planets with impressive precision. They've learned that celestial events follow predictable patterns. Eclipses can be predicted. The planets move in regular ways across the background of stars. They're not doing this for abstract scientific knowledge, though there's certainly intellectual curiosity involved. They're doing it because they believe the gods write messages in the sky. If you can read those messages, you can know what the gods are planning, what the future holds. So they record their observations meticulously, comparing current positions of planets with records from decades or centuries past, looking for patterns, building up a body of knowledge that will eventually influence Greek and Roman astronomy, and through them, modern science. As evening approaches, let your mind wander to a tavern in the city of Ur, around 2000 BC. Taverns are important social centers, and many are run by women. Being a tavern keeper is one of the few independent professions open to women in Mesopotamian society. The tavern keeper, we'll call her Kababa, is a respected figure in her neighborhood. She serves beer, of course, but her establishment is more than just a drinking place. People come here to meet friends, conduct business, hear news from travelers, sometimes to arrange marriages or settle disputes. Kababa knows everyone's business, and while she's discreet, she also has influence because of what she knows. The tavern is simple: mud brick walls, a few small windows high up for ventilation, benches along the walls. Large beer jars are partially buried in the floor to keep them cool. Kababa serves the beer in clay cups, sometimes mixing it with water for those who want it weaker, serving it straight and strong for those who want to forget their troubles for a while. Tonight there's a merchant in from Dilmun, the island trading center in what we now call Bahrain. He's telling stories about his voyage, the fierce storms in the Persian Gulf, the strange customs of foreign peoples, the exotic goods available there. Others are listening, entranced. Most of them will never travel more than a day's walk from where they were born. Hearing about distant places, they can imagine a world far larger and more diverse than their daily experience. A scribe sits in the corner, working by lamplight, writing a letter for someone who can't write themselves. A young couple is negotiating with a matchmaker, discussing dowries and bride prices. Some laborers who finished building a new section of the city wall are celebrating with strong beer, their voices growing louder as the evening wears on. Kababa keeps order with a firm hand. She's seen everything: fights that need to be broken up, customers who need to be cut off, strangers who need to be welcomed, people in trouble who need help. The Code of Hammurabi has specific laws about tavern keepers. They're forbidden to accept grain as payment for beer. They must use honest measures. They can't let criminals gather in their establishments. Kababa knows these laws well. Her livelihood depends on maintaining a good reputation. As the night deepens, let's drift out of the city, into the countryside, to a small farming village. The moon is full, casting silver light across fields of barley that ripple in the warm breeze like waves on water. The village is quiet, families sleeping in their small houses after a long day of work. But not everyone is asleep. A young woman stands on her rooftop, looking up at the stars. She's thinking about the young man from the next village who came to the market yesterday, the way he smiled at her, the hopes she has for the future. She's also worried her father is sick, The crops didn't do as well as hoped this year. Her younger brothers need to eat. Life for ordinary people in ancient Mesopotamia is a constant balance between hope and anxiety, between the rhythms of work and rest, between individual dreams and family obligations. The great temples and palaces, the wars and trade expeditions, the invention of writing and the codification of laws. These things matter. They shape history. But so does this young woman standing under the stars, living her life, feeling her feelings, being human in the same fundamental ways we still are. In the village shrine, barely more than a small room attached to someone's house, a clay figurine stands, a household god, protector of this community. It's crudely made compared to the magnificent statues in city temples, but it's loved, offered small bits of food, addressed in prayers. Please protect us from disease. Please bring rain at the right time. Please help us have enough. The prayers are simple, heartfelt, universal. Across millennia, we can recognize ourselves in them. The same hopes and fears, the same desire for safety, prosperity, and happiness that humans have always carried in their hearts. As dawn approaches, the village begins to stir. A rooster crows. A baby cries. A woman emerges from her house to draw water from the communal well. The daily round begins again, as it has for generations, as it will for generations more. There's comfort in this continuity, in knowing your place in an unbroken chain stretching back to your ancestors and forward to descendants you'll never meet. Let's journey now through time to witness one of the great achievements of Mesopotamian mathematics. We're in a scribal school in Babylon around 1800 BCE, and a teacher is showing his advanced students something remarkable. On a clay tablet, he's drawn a square with its diagonals. Along one diagonal, he's written numbers in cuneiform, numbers that, when we translate them, turn out to be an approximation of the square root of 2, accurate to several decimal places. The Babylonians work in a base 60 number system, unlike our base 10. This might seem strange, but it's actually quite elegant. 60 is divisible by many numbers, making fractions easier to work with. This is why we still have 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. These are inheritances from ancient Mesopotamia, still organizing our experience of time and space thousands of years later. These Babylonian mathematicians can solve quadratic equations, work with geometric progressions, calculate compound interest. They create extensive multiplication tables and reciprocal tables, tools that allow them to divide by multiplying with reciprocals. They understand the Pythagorean theorem. Yes, long before Pythagoras was born, Mesopotamian scribes knew that in a right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse equals the sum of the squares of the other two sides. But their mathematics isn't abstract theory divorced from practical application. They use it to calculate field areas, to determine how many workers are needed to dig a canal, to figure out how much silver is owed when a loan with interest comes due. Mathematics is a tool for managing the complex affairs of civilization, keeping accounts, distributing rations, planning construction projects, predicting astronomical events. Let your mind drift now to the great Ziggurat of Babylon, the Temple of Marduk, known as Etemenenki, the foundation of heaven and earth. This is the structure that may have inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. It rises in 7 massive tiers, each one smaller than the one below, creating a stepped pyramid that dominates the city's skyline. The ziggurat is enormous. Its base covers nearly 30,000 square meters. Each tier is painted a different color: black, red, orange, yellow, silver, gold, and at the very top, deep blue. A grand staircase climbs up the front, leading to the summit where the Temple of Marduk stands, a small building of glazed brick that seems to touch the sky itself. Imagine climbing those stairs. It's a long ascent, and as you climb, the city falls away below you. You can see the Euphrates River cutting through Babylon, The great procession street with its walls decorated with glazed brick reliefs of lions and dragons, the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, the dense neighborhoods of houses pressing close together, the city walls extending far in every direction. Beyond the walls, you see the patchwork of fields, the irrigation canals catching the sun like ribbons of light, the desert beginning where cultivation ends. At the top, the air is cooler, cleaner. The temple is reserved for the highest priests and for Marduk himself. During the New Year festival, the king climbs these stairs to be ritually humiliated before the god, reminded that his power comes not from himself, but from divine favor. He must confess his failures, be struck by the high priest, and only then be reinstated in his role for another year. Even the mightiest king is nothing before the gods. The New Year festival, the Akitu, is the most important celebration in the Babylonian calendar. It lasts for 12 days in the spring, coinciding with the vernal equinox. The entire city participates in processions, rituals, feasting. The statue of Marduk is taken from his temple and paraded through the streets, carried on a boat down the Euphrates, then returned in triumph. The ritual reenacts the creation myth, the victory of order over chaos, ensuring that the world will continue for another year. People line the procession route, pressing close to catch a glimpse of the god statue. Musicians play drums, cymbals, lyres. Priests chant ancient hymns. The smell of incense fills the air, mixed with the scent of flowers strewn in the god's path. Children sit on their father's shoulders for a better view. For these 12 days, normal life pauses, replaced by sacred time, a time outside of time. Let's drift now to a different kind of celebration, more personal and intimate. We're at a wedding in the city of Mari, around 1750 BC. The bride is the daughter of a successful merchant, and she's marrying the son of a local official. It's a good match, bringing together two families of similar status, creating alliances that will benefit both. The bride has been preparing for this day for weeks. Her mother and aunts have helped her gather her dowry, clothing, jewelry, household items, sometimes even fields or houses that will remain her property even after marriage. The groom's family has paid the bride price to her father, compensating him for the loss of his daughter's labor and establishing the seriousness of the marriage contract. The wedding itself involves ritual and contract in equal measure. A feast has been prepared: roasted lamb, fresh bread, dates, figs, beer, and wine. But before the celebration, there's business to conduct. A scribe sits with a clay tablet, recording the terms of the marriage contract. What property is each bringing to the marriage? What happens if the husband divorces the wife? What if she divorces him? What if there are no children? These practical matters are discussed openly, written down, witnessed by family members and community elders. Only after the contract is sealed does the celebration truly begin. The bride and groom are brought together, their hands joined. Blessings are recited. Music fills the air, the plucking of lyres, the beat of drums, voices raised in song. People dance, moving in circles, clapping rhythms. The young couple is showered with good wishes. May you have many sons. May your house be filled with abundance. May you grow old together in happiness. As the evening wears on and the beer flows freely, the celebration becomes more raucous. Jokes are told, some quite bawdy. There are love songs that speak frankly of physical desire, for the Mesopotamians are not prudish about such matters. The bride and groom are eventually escorted to their new home to consummate their marriage, while outside their friends and family continue celebrating into the night. This young couple is beginning their life together with hope, with the support of their communities, with practical arrangements that will help them weather difficulties. Their marriage might bring them deep love, or it might be more of a partnership of mutual benefit, or perhaps both. They'll face challenges, the possibility of infertility, which is seen as a curse, the everyday stresses of making a living, the grief when children die young, as so many do. But they'll also have moments of joy, children who survive and thrive, prosperity earned through hard work, the quiet satisfaction of a life lived together. The seasons turn, and we find ourselves now in late summer, the hottest time of year in Mesopotamia. The temperature climbs above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun is merciless. This is when the least work is done, when those who can afford to rest in the shade and wait for cooler weather. But for many, there's no choice but to work. We're watching laborers building a new canal, part of a massive irrigation project ordered by the king. Hundreds of men are here, some working off tax obligations, others conscripted from conquered territories, some slaves. They work with simple tools, wooden shovels, woven reed baskets for carrying dirt, bronze axes for cutting through tough roots. The work is backbreaking. Dig, load the basket, carry it up out of the canal bed, dump it, return, repeat. All day, every day, for weeks or months until the canal is complete. Overseers walk among the workers, keeping track of who's there, ensuring the work proceeds at the required pace. Water is brought around regularly. These workers are valuable, and dead workers accomplish nothing. But there's also a strange kind of camaraderie in shared hardship. The men work in teams, often from the same village or city. They sing work songs to keep rhythm, the same songs their fathers and grandfathers sang when they dug canals. They share bread and onions during the brief rest periods. They complain together about the heat, the overseers, the seemingly endless nature of the task. And when the canal is finished, when water from the river is directed into it for the first time and flows smoothly along the channel they've dug, there's a moment of satisfaction, even pride. They've created something that will outlast them, that will bring water to fields that will feed thousands of people for generations. Their backs ache and their hands are blistered, but they've done something meaningful. Let's move from the heat of day to the cool of evening, and from the world of labor to the world of art. We're in the palace of an Assyrian king, Sennacherib perhaps, around 700 BC. The walls are covered with relief carvings, enormous panels of alabaster carved with scenes of royal hunts, military victories, religious processions. One scene shows the king hunting lions. The lions are portrayed with remarkable naturalism. You can see the tension in their muscles as they leap, the rage in their faces, the grace even in their dying moments. The king stands in his chariot, bow drawn, arrows flying toward the beasts. It's propaganda, yes, showing the king's bravery and martial skill. But it's also art of the highest order, created by master craftsmen who've studied lions closely, who understand anatomy and movement, who can translate what they see into stone. Another panel shows a military campaign. The Assyrian army besieges a city. Siege engines pound the walls. Archers provide covering fire. Soldiers climb scaling ladders. Inside the city, defenders desperately try to push back the ladders, throw stones at the attackers. In the final scene, the city has fallen. Prisoners are being led away. Tribute is being collected. The city itself is burning. These reliefs aren't just decoration. They're narrative, telling stories of the king's achievements. Courtiers and foreign ambassadors walking through the palace would read these walls like we read books, understanding the messages. The king is powerful. The army is invincible. Resistance is futile. Submission is wise. But look closely at the details, and you see something else too. The artists have included small human moments, a soldier helping a wounded comrade, a mother holding her child among the prisoners, a young scribe carefully recording the spoils. Even in propaganda, humanity finds a way to assert itself. Night has fallen, and we're in the throne room. The king is holding an audience, hearing reports from generals, governors, diplomats. Lamps filled with sesame oil cast flickering light. The air is thick with the smell of incense. Officials stand respectfully, waiting to be called forward, each hoping for favor, fearing disfavor. An ambassador from Egypt is presenting gifts, fine linen, gold, exotic animals. He speaks through a translator, offering friendly greetings from his pharaoh, proposing an alliance against mutual enemies. The Assyrian king listens, his face impassive. He's calculating, is this alliance worth pursuing? What does Egypt really want?
Can they be trusted?
Later, after the formal audience, the king retires to his private chambers. Here, away from the performance of kingship, he can be just a man. Perhaps he's tired, worried about rebellions in distant provinces, about the constant need to project strength, about rivals who would take his throne if he showed any weakness. Being a king in ancient Mesopotamia is glorious, but it's also lonely and dangerous. Many kings die violently, assassinated by relatives, killed in battle, deposed by coups. But tonight, at least, all is well. His children are healthy. The harvest was good. The army is loyal. He can rest, for a while, before rising tomorrow to face the endless demands of ruling an empire. Let your thoughts drift now to the realm of medicine. We're in a healing temple in the city of Nippur, watching a physician treat patients. Mesopotamian medicine is a fascinating blend of practical observation, pharmacology, magic, and ritual. The physician examines a man with a fever. He checks the patient's pulse, looks at his tongue, asks about symptoms. Based on what he finds, he makes a diagnosis. Sometimes the diagnosis includes a supernatural element, the hand of the ghost, or touched by the demon of the wind. But the treatment is often quite practical: herbal remedies, dietary changes, rest. The physician's assistant is preparing medicine, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle, mixing them with honey or oil. Mesopotamian doctors use dozens of plants with genuine medicinal properties. Willow bark for pain and fever. It contains the compound we now synthesize as aspirin. Poppy for sedation. Garlic as an antiseptic. Various plants for digestive complaints. But treatment doesn't stop with physical medicine. The physician also prescribes incantations to be recited, amulets to be worn, rituals to be performed. This isn't superstition as we might think of it. It's a coherent system where physical and spiritual health are inseparable. Disease can have physical causes, but it can also come from divine displeasure, from sorcery, from pollution by contact with impure things. Another patient, a woman in labor, is attended by a midwife. Childbirth is dangerous, perhaps the most dangerous thing a woman will face in her life. The midwife knows techniques to help, positions that ease delivery, herbs that strengthen contractions, ways to turn a baby that's positioned wrong. She also recites prayers to Nintu, the mother goddess, asking for protection. If something goes wrong, if the baby won't come or the bleeding won't stop, there's little more to be done. The midwife does her best, but infant and maternal mortality are simply facts of life. A woman might go through pregnancy and childbirth 6, 8, 10 times in her life and consider herself fortunate if half her children survive to adulthood. Those who do survive infancy face other dangers: infectious diseases, accidents, malnutrition during bad years. Life expectancy is short by our standards. Someone who lives to 40 is doing well. 50 is old. 60 is ancient and rare. Yet people find joy despite these harsh realities, or perhaps because of them. Joy is more precious when life is uncertain. We see this in Mesopotamian poetry, in love songs that celebrate the pleasure of the moment, in hymns that praise the beauty of the world, in proverbs that counsel enjoying life while you can. Let's visit a garden now, a rare oasis of green in the dusty city. This is a pleasure garden, attached to a wealthy merchant's house. Date palms provide shade and fruit. Pomegranate trees grow along the walls. There are beds of onions and cucumbers, herbs like coriander and cumin, flowers cultivated just for their beauty and fragrance. In the center is a small pond, fed by a channel from the nearby canal. Fish swim in the water. Carp, kept both for food and for the pleasure of watching them. The sound of water trickling is soothing in the heat. This garden is a created paradise, a small space of controlled nature in the midst of the artificial environment of the city. The merchant sits here in the evening with his family, enjoying the cool air. His children play, splashing at the edge of the pond. His wife sits nearby, speaking with a neighbor. They're discussing ordinary things: whose daughter is getting married, the quality of the barley in the market, a festival coming up at the temple. These small moments of domestic peace are what most people live for. The great events of history, wars, the rise and fall of dynasties, the building of monuments, these matter, but they're distant from daily life for most people. What matters more immediately is having enough to eat, being healthy, maintaining good relationships with family and neighbors, finding small pleasures where you can. As darkness deepens, the family goes inside. The children are put to bed, nestled on sleeping mats, their mother singing them a lullaby. It's a song about the moon goddess Nana, sailing across the night sky in her boat of light. The melody is simple, soothing, as old as anyone can remember. The merchant and his wife sit together for a while longer, discussing the next day's business. There's a caravan coming from the north, bringing tin and precious stones. He needs to have silver weighed out, to inspect the goods carefully, to negotiate a good price. She reminds him of obligations, a gift they owe to the temple, a loan coming due, their son's apprenticeship fee. It's the endless practical management of life, the same in ancient Mesopotamia as in any time and place. And then they too lie down to sleep, as the city grows quiet around them, as the moon rises higher, as the stars will slowly across the dark sky. In the palace, guards walk their rounds, torches casting pools of light in the darkness. In the temple, priests maintain a night vigil, keeping lamps burning before the gods who never sleep. In the harbor, ships rock gently at anchor, waiting for morning to continue their voyages. In houses throughout the city, thousands of people sleep, dreaming dreams we can never know, living lives that matter enormously to them even if history doesn't record their names. Let's drift now to the countryside, to a shepherd watching his flock on the edge of the desert. It's a clear night, the stars brilliant in the absence of any other light. The sheep and goats are settled for the night, dim shapes in the darkness. The shepherd sits by a small fire, wrapped in his woolen cloak against the cool night air. He knows these animals individually. This one tends to wander, that one is aggressive, another is particularly good for milk. He knows the landscape intimately, where to find water, which plants are good grazing, where predators might lurk. He knows the sky, which stars mark the seasons, how to navigate by them if caught far from home. His is an ancient way of life, perhaps the most ancient. Before there were cities or writing or kings, there were shepherds moving across the land with their flocks, following the seasons, following the rain. Even now, with great urban civilizations flourishing, most of the world's land is still inhabited by nomadic herders, living much as their ancestors did. The shepherd plays a reed flute, a simple melody drifting across the empty land. It's a lonely life in some ways, weeks or months spent away from human company, except for other shepherds occasionally encountered. But there's also freedom here, and a deep connection to the natural world that city dwellers lose. As the night progresses, the fire burns down to embers. The shepherd wraps his cloak tighter and settles against a rock, his staff beside him, his dog curled at his feet. He doesn't sleep deeply. Always part of his awareness is on the flock, alert for any sound of trouble. But he rests, under the same stars that his ancestors watched, living a life that feels timeless. Dawn comes slowly, the eastern sky lightening from black to deep blue to pale gold. The shepherd rises, stirs the embers of his fire, eats a bit of bread and cheese from his provisions. The flock begins to stir, bleating, ready to move to new grazing. He counts them, making sure none have wandered off in the night, then starts them moving, his dog helping to keep them together. From a distance, it's a biblical scene, unchanged for millennia, the shepherd, his staff, his flock spreading across the hillside, the rising sun painting everything in shades of gold and amber. This is how Abraham might have looked, or the shepherds who became the first kings of Uruk, or countless nameless others whose lives are forgotten but who kept civilization fed with wool and meat and milk. The sun climbs higher, and we return to the city one final time to see the daily morning routine. Bakers are pulling fresh bread from their ovens, the smell wafting through the streets. The market is setting up, merchants arranging their goods, calling out to early shoppers. Water carriers move through the streets, selling drinking water brought from the canal, stored in large clay jars carried on their shoulders. Children are emerging from houses, the older ones heading to work or school, younger ones playing in the streets. A group of girls plays a clapping game, singing a rhyming song. Boys kick around a ball made of leather stuffed with rags. A baby takes its first wobbling steps, while its mother watches proudly. Life continues, as it always has, as it always will. The great sweep of history is made up of these small moments, repeated millions of times. Waking, working, eating, loving, sleeping. Birth and death, joy and sorrow, hope and fear. The specific details change across centuries, but the fundamental human experience remains recognizable. We've traveled through time and space, from the earliest marsh villages to the great empires, from the highest palaces to the humblest homes. We've seen Mesopotamia's incredible achievements: writing, law, literature, mathematics, astronomy, architecture. We've also seen the ordinary lives of ordinary people, because civilization isn't just built by kings and priests and scribes. It's built by farmers and potters, weavers and bakers, soldiers and merchants, mothers and fathers, every person doing their part. As you drift toward sleep, let these images settle in your mind like sediment drifting down through water, slowly coming to rest. Picture the Tigris and Euphrates flowing as they have for thousands of years, past cities that rose and fell, carrying water to fields that fed millions of lives, most of them forgotten now, but all of them real, all of them mattering in their moment. The clay tablets crumble, the brick walls erode, the great monuments fall into ruin. But something persists, the idea of civilization itself, the belief that humans can come together to create something larger than themselves, can build cities and compose songs, can seek justice and create beauty, can look at the stars and wonder. Let yourself float on that wonder now, on the amazing fact that we can reach back across 5,000 years and touch these ancient lives, reading their words, seeing their art, understanding something of their hopes and dreams. We are their descendants, not necessarily by blood but by inheritance. Everything we are, everything we've built, rests on foundations they laid. Sleep now, peacefully, knowing you're connected to this vast human story, this long chain of people who lived and loved and worked and dreamed, just as you do, just as humans always have, just as they always will, flowing forward like a river through time, carrying us all along in its ancient, eternal current. Let the images fade, the ziggurat, the marketplace, the wedding feast, the shepherd under the stars. Let them blend together like colors in water, like dreams forming and dissolving. Rest now in the knowledge of where we've come from. Rest in connection to all who came before. Rest, let go, sleep. And in the morning, when you wake, you'll remember that you are part of this story too, this ongoing human adventure, and whatever you do today, however small it seems, is your contribution to the great sweep of history, your moment of being alive and being human in an extraordinary world. Rest now, breathe slowly, Let the ancient Mesopotamian night embrace you with its quiet and its stars. Drift, sleep, peace.